Hey guys, welcome back. In today's video, we're going to be following up on a previous improvement that we put in on this property, the screen that's behind us that's separating one of our food plots with our backyard. As we mentioned in a previous video, we are selling this property, so we will no longer be able to put in habitat improvements, but I still want to take the time before we leave to show you guys the progression of previous improvements that we've installed so you guys can get a better idea as to how long a certain improvement will take to get established. So again, in this video, I did just want to follow up on the screen that we put in to separate our backyard, which is located behind the camera, from the food plot, which is located on the back side of the screen. And there are different aspects to this screen planted at different times, so we can kind of go through that as well. And today I'm very fortunate. My son said he wanted to help me with today's video, and he wanted to share a few things as it relates to the screen that we put in. Go ahead, buddy. What do you want to share with him?
Let's go and tell him about this.
Okay.
So we built this all by ourselves with Mom and Dad and me, so they could hide in here.
That's right. So we, over the past 3 years, we put in a few different types of screens within this screen. But yeah, myself, my wife, and my son, and last year my daughter helped as well. We planted a few different types of plants within this screen to help the deer hide within the food plot. So we're showing you guys the progression of the different varieties of plants that we have growing within this screen. You know, we're going to kind of go back right to the beginning, the spring of 2019, when we first started to establish this screen. In the spring of 2019, we put down our switchgrass seed. So this year will be its 4th growing season. So it has 3 growing seasons under its belt. And it did pretty well during the 3rd growing season. The first season, not so much. Second season, it got maybe belly button height. And last year, it was at least shoulder height, and then some parts of it were over my head. So it did a pretty good job in its 3rd growing season, reaching at least 6 feet. However, just switchgrass alone for this particular screen and what we needed to screen off was not going to be enough. Our house sits on a hill kind of behind the camera. And if we really wanted these deer to feel secure within our food plot, we needed to do our best to screen off our house as well. Deer here are very skittish, and they just do not like to see anything. They don't want to see people, they don't want to see houses, cars. They want to be left alone completely. So we needed to make sure that we incorporated a higher type of screen as well. And that's where some of the other screening varieties came into play.
So about this food plot, Daddy and me made this food plot.
Yeah.
And we need to patch some spots, but that's fine.
Yep. And that's exactly right. When we initially put down our seed, we planted everything very evenly, but some of it came up thicker and taller than others. There are some spots that have a few gaps that the new landowner might need to address if this coming season, if things don't fill in like we want them to. So fast forward to the spring of 2020, 1 year after seeding the initial switchgrass screen, we planted a bunch of Streamco willow, and we planted also a few elderberries as well. So the idea was to not only have multiple layers to the screen, but also have multiple heights to the different levels within the screen. But also with the Streamco willows, once they become established, we can actually take the cuttings from those willows and plant those throughout our property as well. And that's another thing that I want to follow up on and show you guys the progress, is how these Streamco willows are growing after just 2 seasons. So again, they were planted in the spring, March of 2020. Fast forward 2 years, and those cuttings that were maybe 12 to 18 inches when we put them in the ground, some of them are over my head, and I'm 6'2". Now, not every single one of them is growing over my head, but they're all doing fairly well. I think we had 100% survival on those cuttings, so they did very, very well. And again, some of them are over my head. Another thing that we planted on the same day as the Streamco willows were these elderberry bushes. My wife wanted to have a few elderberries closer to the house, so I figured we could incorporate those on the front side of the screen. And as you can see, they took very well, and they are growing very well. So this is a common elderberry growing after about 2 years after being put in the ground. And again, these were probably only a foot to 18 inches once we stuck them in the ground. So you can see they were established very well, and I'm very pleased with the results. As I mentioned earlier in the video, the purpose of this screen is to block off our backyard and our house from the food plot located behind me. And again, it takes a little bit of time for switchgrass to establish. It takes some time for those willow cuttings to kind of fill in and get the height needed to screen off the backyard. And so we needed something a little bit taller that might fill in a little bit quicker. And that's where the Miscanthus came in that we planted last year. I believe they went in the ground sometime around March 25 of 2021, and a month later, April 28, they were already starting to poke out of the ground. And by late June, they were already over my head. Now, depending on how far apart your spacing is with those rhizomes, there's a good chance that during the first year, your Miscanthus screen is not going to shield off, whatever you're trying to screen off 100%. But as time goes on and that screen fills in, it's going to literally create a wall of Miscanthus that you will not be able to see through. So again, this is something I want to follow up on with you guys and show you what first year Miscanthus looks like. Again, depending on your spacing, you can kind of see last year's Miscanthus growing right there. And we can expect that the new growth will start in just about a month. And this year, instead of just having one shoot coming up out of the ground, we can expect anywhere from 3 to 5 per rhizome. And then over time, probably by year 3, we're going to have a complete wall of Miscanthus, along with the elderberry, with the streamco willow, and the switchgrass. This is going to be a pretty solid screen. And what's cool about the Miscanthus, the elderberry, the streamco willow is as those plants age, we can take the cuttings from the streamco willow, we can take the cuttings from the elderberry, we can actually dig up the Miscanthus rhizomes and we can disperse those throughout our property as we see fit. Now, obviously, we won't be able to do that on this property because we're selling it, but that's something you can do with your screens, depending on what you're planting. And you can actually bring those plants, those clones, and kind of disperse those throughout your property. Well guys, that's pretty much all we had for you in today's video. Again, we just wanted to kind of follow up and show you guys the progress of the screen and show you how different screening options, how they kind of grow and progress over time. If you guys do have any comments or questions on screens or anything we have planted here or screens in general, please leave those in the comment section below. I'll get back to those as soon as I can.
We'll see you in the next video.
Good job.